Once upon a time, not in a magical kingdom with talking frogs and glass slippers, but in a far more itchy, muddy, and occasionally plague-ridden world, there lived people, real people, people with crooked teeth, calloused hands, and dreams that mostly involved not getting dysentery. Welcome, dear listener, to the Middle Ages. Tonight, I shall tuck you into a blanket of history, woven with drama, laced with humor, and mildly stained with the questionable hygiene of the 13th century. For we are about to take a gentle tumble through time into a world where castles stood tall. The air was thick with superstition, and, spoiler alert, everyone smelled like goat. Close your eyes, unless you're driving, breathe deeply, and prepare to time travel. Let us begin. It is the year, well, somewhere between 500 and 1500. Time wasn't exactly precise back then. People marked the passing of years not by birthdays or iPhone releases, but by events like the year the chickens got unusually fat, or the day the bishop caught fire. Now, life in the medieval world was not evenly distributed. Imagine society as a really uncomfortable pyramid. At the top were the nobles, rich, powerful, and prone to jousting accidents. Below them, the clergy, those who prayed and reminded everyone else they were definitely going to hell. Then came the peasants, and if you looked even lower, perhaps under a haystack or beside the latrine, you'd find the serfs, who technically belonged to the land, like weeds or broken fence posts. Let's wander gently through each of their worlds. First stop, the manor house of Lord Cedric von Snobbington. Ah yes, Lord Cedric, a man with 12 tunics, 6 goblets, and precisely 0 understanding of how wheat becomes bread. He rises not with the sun, but when his servant gently slaps him awake with a goose feather. Breakfast, a roast pheasant, half a melon, and a detailed report on how much better he is than the neighboring lord. His biggest concern today, whether his new tapestry makes his war scars look noble or just itchy. Meanwhile, far beyond the walls of luxury, across the moat, filled with frogs and regret, peasants are already halfway through their day. Meet Mabel. She's 32, which means she's the village elder. She owns 2 goats, 7 children, and exactly 1 wooden spoon. Her morning begins with a prayer, followed by milking the goats, repairing a thatched roof with mud, and yelling at her husband to stop talking to the turnips. But don't feel too bad for Mabel. She's got spirit, strong arms, and dreams of one day owning a 2nd spoon. Back up the social ladder, let's peek inside the monastery. Brother Gerald, a monk with an unfortunate bowl haircut and a deep fondness for quiet, has just begun copying the Bible for the 73rd time, in Latin, by hand, with a quill made from the feather of a chicken who almost definitely resents him. Life is peaceful here, simple, unless someone sins. Then it's confession, fasting, and maybe a light flogging. Yes, dear listener, the medieval world was vast, layered, and confusing. There were lords who knew not hunger, and serfs who knew little else. But even in hardship, there was laughter. There was song. There were bizarre festivals involving donkeys, dressed as bishops. And this, my friend, is just the beginning. Now that we've dipped our toes into the muddy puddle of medieval life, it's time to dive a little deeper. Don't worry, I'll hold your hand, and I brought extra socks. Let's take a little walk to the town square. Ah, the medieval town. A bustling hub of smells, trades, gossip, and disease. The roads are made of cobblestone and dreams, and unfortunately, horse droppings. Lots of horse droppings. Here we find people doing what they do best, surviving. Let's meet Thomas the Tanner. His job is to turn animal hides into leather. How? Well, it involves urine, manure, and a willingness to smell like sadness for the rest of your life. But Thomas doesn't mind. He's proud of his work. Leather's in high demand for shoes, belts, armor, and the occasional dominatrix bishop. Don't ask. Just across the square, we find Agnes the alewife. Agnes brews beer. Not just for fun, but because water is basically soup with bacteria in it. Beer is safer and tastier. And let's face it, when you're working 14 hours a day with a toothache and one sock, being a little tipsy is a form of self-care. Agnes has perfected her craft. Her secret? A pinch of herbs, a clean barrel, and absolutely no rats falling in this time. Children run by with wooden hoops, chasing dreams and each other. A juggler tosses flaming sticks, narrowly missing the blacksmith's apprentice, who is definitely, absolutely in love with the baker's daughter, even though she only has one eyebrow. Romance is alive and well in the Middle Ages. Let's follow the clanging sound of metal, shall we? Inside the blacksmith's forge, it's hotter than a knight in full armor on a summer day. And yes, that's actually happening in the corner. Poor Sir Percival. He's sweating through his chainmail and wondering why jousting tournaments don't come with air conditioning. The blacksmith, Big Henry, is hammering out horseshoes like he's angry at them. And maybe he is. His horse stepped on his foot this morning. But his work is vital. Without him, there are no tools, no weapons, and nothing to dramatically throw into the fire during arguments. Outside the town walls, life moves slower. A traveling merchant arrives, pulling a cart of goods and wonders, exotic spices, worn fabrics, suspiciously shiny amulets that protect against witches. He sets up shop with flair, claiming his potions cure everything from headaches to heartbreak. A nun buys two. And over yonder, yes, I said yonder, there's a young scribe trying to write poems for coins. He performs to a crowd of one, a goat. The goat is unimpressed. Not everyone in town is working, though. Let's visit the castle again. The nobles are preparing for a feast. Tapestries are hung. Tables are set. Musicians tune their lutes while servants race around in a barely controlled panic. Lady Guinevere, of something long in Latin, is trying on her 6th gown. It's a shade called faded moss, and she insists it brings out her authority. Her husband, Lord Cedric, yes, our old friend, has just remembered he's supposed to give a speech about generosity and virtue. He's practicing in front of a mirror and has already cried twice. Evenings in the Middle Ages had a strange beauty. Stars above, firelight below, laughter in the halls, whispered prayers in the fields. And as the town settles in for sleep, a bell tolls in the distance, a reminder of time passing, of life, strange and wonderful, trudging ever onward. And yes, the goat finally walks away. Morning breaks again, and with it, another chance for medieval glory, or at least survival. The rooster crows, the pigs grunt, and Brother Gerald is already regretting his vow of silence. Let's talk about food. Now, food in the Middle Ages wasn't exactly what you'd call Michelin-starred. In fact, most of it wasn't even entirely food, but it was fuel, gruel mostly, and people made do. The peasants had a hearty breakfast of yesterday's porridge, reheated with a fresh pinch of disappointment. Lunch might be some stale bread, dipped in onion broth, which is like soup if you squint hard enough. But come harvest time, there's celebration. Let's walk into the harvest festival. Picture this: haystacks decorated with ribbons, entire pigs roasting on spits, and someone inevitably getting kicked by a cow in the middle of a dance circle. Mabel is there, of course. She's won the cabbage pie contest 3 years running And this year, she's defending her title like a knight of carbs. The local bard sings a tale of Sir Roderick the Flatulent, and children laugh until they fall over. It's a good day. No rain, no rats in the stew, bliss. And speaking of knights, let's travel now to the battlefield, or rather, the muddy field, where knights pretend to be heroic while mostly yelling and falling off horses. Sir Percival is jousting. Again. And by jousting, I mean launching himself at another armored man with a giant stick while everyone watches and pretends this is normal behavior. The crowd cheers, mostly because someone brought ale. You see, war was a constant threat in medieval life. Sometimes it was over land, sometimes religion, and sometimes because one lord accused another of cheating at dice. Knights trained from childhood, learning swordplay, horsemanship, and how to write love poems that made absolutely no sense. But not all battles were fought with swords. Let us peek into a cottage, where Eleanor, the village healer, is grinding herbs into a paste. She's treated fevers, cuts, and men who accidentally drank too much of the fermented turnip wine. Eleanor is wise and tired and slightly feared because no one is quite sure whether her healing chant is a prayer or just humming angrily. She's helped more people than the local barber surgeon, who believes bleeding people solves absolutely everything. Toothache, bloodletting, sadness, bloodletting, stubbed toe, leeches, ah yes, leeches, nature's little vampires. Every apothecary had them. Every patient feared them. Every leech was living its best, most bloodthirsty life. Now let's talk fashion. No, really. For the nobles, velvet, fur, and fabric so expensive they'd make your bank account cry. For the peasants, wool. Always wool. Sometimes dyed with berries. Sometimes just brown. Shoes were optional. Pants were not a guarantee. And underwear, let's just say, layers were limited. But it wasn't all dirt and desperation. No, dear listener, there was art, there was music. There were illuminated manuscripts so detailed they made your eyes twitch just looking at them. And for every rough day in the field, there was a night at the inn, a warm fire, a lute, a stranger with a story. This was life, hard, beautiful, messy, real. By now, dear listener, you've met the peasants, the nobles, the brewers, the bleeders, the knights, and the romantically confused scribes. But there is still so much more. Tonight we venture deeper into the shadows of medieval life, past the warmth of the hearth, beyond the village square, into the murkier parts of the past. Because where there are people, there are problems. And in the Middle Ages, problems came dressed as superstition. Let's talk medicine again. Now, medicine back then was a creative field. If you were sick, it meant your humors were out of balance. What humors? Oh, just the sacred four: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Yes, that's right. People were diagnosed based on how moist their insides felt. You had a fever, too much blood, a headache, probably demons, rash on your leg, witchcraft, definitely witchcraft. Which brings us to one of the darker joys of medieval life: blaming women for everything. Meet Beatrice. She's a midwife. She's helped bring over 40 babies into the world. She talks to her cat. She grows herbs. She once said the weather felt strange. Naturally, she's a witch. At least according to the village idiot Gregory, who spent the week trying to convince everyone that Beatrice turned his donkey into a toad. It didn't work. The donkey was just asleep. But Beatrice still has to be very careful around bonfires. Religion in the Middle Ages wasn't just Sunday sermons and stained glass. It was law, it was politics, It was everywhere. Priests weren't just spiritual leaders. They were also tax collectors, marriage counselors, and part-time ghostbusters. And the church itself, well, let's just say it had more gold than God. Pilgrimages were the medieval version of a spiritual road trip. You'd walk for hundreds of miles, risking bandits, bad weather, and blisters the size of scones just to kneel at a shrine and maybe, just maybe, get a miracle. Or at least a trinket. Let's not forget the relics. You could find the toe of a saint in one village, the same saint's ear 2 towns over, and his entire skeleton in France. Either he had a lot of limbs, or someone was fibbing. But in the end, religion gave people hope, structure, meaning, and something to whisper to the stars when the world felt cruel. Now, dear listener, shall we take a journey into the castle's underbelly? Let's meet the cooks. The royal kitchens, a symphony of shouting, boiling, and questionable hygiene. Meat pies the size of babies, stews filled with mystery, spices imported at great expense, mostly so the nobles could say, "Oh yes, that's cinnamon," and nod wisely. And somewhere, at the edge of the pantry, a rat stares you down like he owns the place. Which, to be fair, he probably does. Meanwhile, in the Great Hall, minstrels are tuning their lutes and nobles are settling in for an evening of excessive chewing. Feasting in the Middle Ages was less about taste and more about bragging rights. Peacocks roasted with their feathers reattached. Entire fish served inside bigger fish. Meat jellies, so much jelly, and not the good kind. One nobleman, attempting to impress a visiting dignitary, had a pie filled with live birds. It did not end well. Birds everywhere. A bishop lost his wig. Drama, delight, digestion problems. This was entertainment. And so, as the night deepens, the village quiets. The children are tucked beneath woolen blankets. The blacksmith's forge is cold. Brother Gerald, despite his vow of silence, mumbles in his sleep. And Lord Cedric dreams of battle while drooling on a pillow embroidered with his own face. The stars twinkle overhead. The same stars we see now, though fewer perhaps, for they had no light pollution, only torchlight, and the occasional suspicious glow from the woods. And as the final candle flickers out, we remember this. The Middle Ages were wild and weird and wonderful. Full of pain, yes, but also full of song and struggle and joy in strange places. Life was shorter, but somehow fuller, richer, or at least muddier. And through it all, people endured. They laughed, they danced, they made terrible decisions, and they survived, just like us. Sleep well, my friend. You've survived the Middle Ages, and you didn't even have to smell the tanner's shop.